Welcome to a slightly unusual 21st birthday party down here in Cornwall. This thing next to us is Jenny's Lake on the famous Whiteacres complex, and for the past 2 decades it's been the home for one of the biggest matches on the UK match fishing calendar.
Yes, this is the Parkdean Masters. It is such a good event. It's been running for a long time. It's made a lot of people a lot of money. It's made a lot of people quite famous, but it's also broken quite a number of hearts and crashed a few reputations too. To get here is tough. To win it can be even tougher.
You know, I've been doing this event since 2007, coming here and covering it, and I've seen some amazing stuff. It's just such a brilliant match, isn't it, Husey?
It is. You know, there's more to it than just this match. There's the run up to it. There's the history that belongs to it. You know, there is an awful lot of credibility in that trophy as well. Everybody likes the check, of course they do, but as these events get older they just become bigger, and this is one of the longest running events in the country. You know, back in the day when there weren't big money matches, this was one of the first big money matches, and as a result it drew the attention of the best anglers around, and as a result it's been contested by the best anglers for such a long period of time, and the lineup that we've got today shows that. And you know, I run the risk of repeating myself, obviously, because I repeat myself a lot. I run the risk of repeating myself so many times when we stand here at the beginning of these big events and go, isn't the lineup incredible? The lineup's incredible. It really is. We've got former Parkdean Masters winners, we've got UK champs, we've got England internationals, we've got former England internationals, we've got superheroes on the domestic scene. It's going to be a tear-up. It really, really is.
Now, for it to be a proper tear-up, Mr. Hughes, we need to have a draw. And earlier on, I caught up with a couple of really likely looking lads. In fact, they sound like a bit of a dodgy firm of solicitors. Geldart and Macmillan.
Never heard of them.
Yeah, let's see what they've got to say about it all. So while the draw's about to take place, I've got a little bit of help from 2 guys who know a lot more about this than I do. Andy Geldart, who won this event in 2015, and Mike Macmillan, who was in the final in 2018. I'm really interested in your take, fellas. You know, this process, preparing for the draw, the guys are queuing up for their, you know, for their tabards that they're going to wear in the match. Andy, what's this bit like? The nerves must be flying.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, your heart's in your mouth. You know, it's really intense, and this is going to be make or break for, you know, for the next sort of like 6-7 hours. And you know, it's really interesting for the lads, and it's exciting but yet nervous.
Do you feel the same, Mike?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as I said, you know, the Mayfair Festival, that Jenny's wasn't in, so a lot of these lads won't really know where they want to be, although there are favoured areas on the lake every year, really. But yeah, very nervous wait, I think.
As your hand goes towards that fateful ticket, what are your fingers crossed? What are you doing? What's in your head?
Well, I think you're just praying. You're praying more than anything, because, I mean, everybody normally wants us peg 16. Everybody knows, you know. But the amount of different pegs over the last sort of like 6 or 7 years that have won this final, and the last 2 years they've pegged it double bank back how they used to do it, and it's always been one. It's been one from the other bank the last 2 years. So it's literally, you don't know what peg you want, which makes it a really interesting final. So when you're going up for that peg, you know, you just don't know what you want. I remember when I won out, I drew peg 3, and I was so disappointed, but you know, the fish were there. So it's interesting. Like I say, you just don't know what peg you want.
But of course, so Andy got the draw maybe that he didn't want initially, but ended up winning the match. I remember when you were in the final, you didn't fancy your peg at all, did you?
I didn't, to be fair, no. And that year it was a particularly bad year, in the middle of a storm. So the conditions were horrendous, which meant a lot of pegs were unfishable. Today, flat, calm, sunshine, completely different conditions. 16, 15 are going to be, my prediction is going to be hard to beat, I think, for those reasons.
I suppose the difficult bit sometimes also is if you pull out the peg. I mean, I know both of you have done that a few times. Clint's just about to do the draw, so let's see who pulls out what peg.
So, Andy Power, come on up, mate.
This is always
Familiar
the one,
with
everyone watches this one, Andy Power drawing.
Familiar with big finals, this lad. I don't think he's ever
Which way does he go though? Yeah.
15.
He wants 15, he said.
37.
Peg 37, where's that?
Well done, mate.
So that is an end peg,
Yeah.
which is very
Is
interesting.
it 16? Sorry, opposite 15, isn't it?
That's where Brad Hancock was last year. wasn't
Bradley
it?
might have
Around
been
there.
on 35, was he, I think?
Do you know the thing I always find fascinating with you guys fishing these big matches? I know you have to kind of, at some point during the competition, work
Paul
out
Holland.
what you think you're going to need to win the match. How on earth do you do that?
Well, just saying that just before we move on there, the 43's just been drawn, which is one of the pegs I would have taken today.
That's another MPEG.
Yeah,
is Paul
very
Holland.
good feed. Yeah.
That's Paul got. Paul was a regular in these finals. I think Paul was in the final when you fished. wasn't he?
19, peg 19,
Paul's been
Paul
in the
Holland.
final
Well done, mate.
almost every single year. He's never missed one hardly, and I really don't think anybody would sort of begrudge Paul winning today because he's such a lovely lad. He's an awesome angler, and he's been in this final possibly more than anybody else. So I think he's due one.
Phil Canning.
Now, Phil Canning's another one who's been there or thereabouts, certainly in the sections, hasn't he?
Very consistent angler, Phil. Yeah, he'd be
44.
44. Yeah.
That's where Des won
Yeah,
it
that's
from.
Des won it from, isn't it?
2 years ago.
It's interesting looking at all the faces, isn't it? I love it, the sort of, the calculations that people must be doing in their heads as to, well, that one's gone, so I want that one. It's just fantastic.
Nick Speed.
Now, this is a man we're going to have our eye on, Nick Speed, peg 30.
Oh no.
An end peg again, but that's the wrong end of the lake.
Yeah. I think it's quite narrow there as well. I was sort of excited to see where Nick drew because he's such a good angler on anything, but especially on a method feeder, he's absolutely unbelievable.
Callum Dix.
Now, here's Callum.
Yeah.
This would be one of the people I really want to keep an eye on. There's John Arthur coming too. He's drawn 17. That's not the worst draw in the world, is
No,
it?
very good area. Really, he's right in the area. He'd be very happy with that, Callum.
Craig Edmonds. Peg 6. John Arthur.
John Arthur.
16 still
end
there,
peg.
isn't
Is
John
15
Arthur.
still in as well?
No
Or has
way.
it gone?
Here we go.
Peg 16.
You just knew it, didn't you, John Arthur? John Arthur has drawn 16, one of the best commercial anglers in the country, a specialist at this sort of fishing.
Extremely happy with that draw.
If you were a betting man, you'd put a couple of quid on him, wouldn't you? And Russell Grimes finishing things off with peg 20. So we've got 4 hours fishing ahead of us. This match is going to be absolutely brilliant. I just, thanks so much for your contribution, fellas. It's been a real insight standing here, talking to you and watching the draw as it's gone through, and almost hearing your brains whirring as people have pulled pegs out. So thank you so much, Andy. Both of you. Mike, we'll see you in the final next year, obviously, hopefully.
Fingers crossed. Thanks, Andy. Cheers.
And you, mate.
Yeah, fingers crossed. Cheers, Andy.
Here we go again then, Andy. What are your thoughts on this one?
I don't know what to think. I'm quite optimistic, really. I don't think it's a particularly noted area, but it's a bit of an unknown entity about it. I've got a bit of room to my right. It's very shallow, but if a few fish turn up down the edge, it might be all right.
This one's missing from the CV as well, isn't it?
A little bit, yeah. I've missed out a few times. It was £2 off winning once, so yeah, it'd be nice to win.
Well, I was here 2 years ago, so I wasn't too clever. It's not the area I wanted to draw, to be honest, but it's a Parkdean, you never know, do you?
It's interesting you being here, mate, because obviously looking around the field, you're the only former winner taking part in the final, and that's quite unusual. What's that like coming into this event knowing you're kind of, you're the big name here, Craig?
I won't go as far as that, but no, it's lovely. I know what it feels like, which is really nice, and you sort of thrive to get that feeling again, which keeps me motivated to come back.
I think it'll be one in this half. So there was 2 pegs left, 16 or 20, and they were probably my first 2 picks. So yeah.
You've got a knack for doing that, John.
Well, actually, I have drawn 16 my last 3 days now. 16 on Twin Oaks, 16 on Match Lake, and then 16 on Jenny's today. So third time lucky. Hopefully I can have a big win.
Look, you've been so close in a lot of these finals.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
what would it mean to you to go the next step?
Yeah, everything. I mean, like you said, I've been so close. I think I've been second 3 times. But yeah, it's everything. The money's great, but just to win it and just have it on your CV is fantastic.
Nick, what are you thinking?
Well, to be honest with you, Andy, I really fancy it. There were 2 pegs I wanted. The M peg on this bank, which I'm on, or Russell Grimes's peg. So actually I quite fancy it. And as I'm sat on my peg, the wind's getting stronger. There's more fish moving. Look, it's a 4-hour match. I've got to be positive. I've got to fish for carp.
What would it mean to you to put one of these away, John?
Oh, lovely, wouldn't it? It would be lovely. Just to take out a big final would be nice. Really nice. And the money would help, wouldn't it?
Well, you've been in a few of them now.
Yeah, I've been in a few. Just need a lucky break, really, don't you? One lucky break and you're away. So hopefully today's the day.
Well, we're off. John Arthur on the far side, the man that's pulled a plumb peg, dumping in a lot of grub with a big pot. That's a very positive start, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. You know what? Walking around speaking to all the guys this morning, the thing that's very obvious is that really this year nobody knows where this is going to come from. And I have to say, when we decided where we were going to start talking our usual brand of nonsense to start this match off, I honestly didn't know where to go. So we've kind of reverted to type and gone to peg 16 and 17. We've got Callum Dix in the lime green top on peg 17 and John Arthur on 16, as you've just said. This is going to be good, isn't it?
Well, they're not in the same section, these two, but they are next door to each other, and it's going to be a big old scrap there. Interestingly, they're both fishing 2 completely different methods. Callum's chucking a feeder out to the island, and John is on the pole at the moment. Now he's dumped a load of bait in, so he's looking for a keen and positive start. We've got a fish in front of us here now, first fish that we've seen of any note, and this is Rob Kite, peg 36.
This is the area, of course, where the match was won from last year, Rob, which was Brad Hancock.
Yes.
From this very area, and nobody gave him really a prayer. This is the impression I'm getting. The guys really don't know where the fish are going to turn up. It's so still.
Well, I think last year really put a spanner in the works because it was one from an unfancied area.
Yeah.
And that's opened a lot of people's eyes, because when an event takes place on the same venue at the same time of year, a lot of the time it does revert to a form. And everybody gets used to that form, and they sort of almost form the mindset that you've got to be in one of 2 areas to be able to win it.
Yeah, talk yourself out of even...
Exactly. And, Brad came in last year, fished completely different to everyone else, and suddenly he's opened everybody's eyes that if you're on fish and you fish them in the right way, you've got a good chance of winning it.
Is that a big Carasio and he's on a soft elastic?
Looks
I can't
like
quite
it.
see. I was going to ask you about the weather. I know you're all over this sort of thing normally with your carp head on. What's your feeling about it? Because there's barely a breath of wind, Rob. I mean, listen to the two of us talking. Usually it's blowing a hoolie down here, freezing cold. It's like late summer.
Yes, it's we're in an area of just on the edge of something called anticyclonic gloom.
Steady on.
So there's been a big low pressure that's been moving down the eastern side of the country in the early part of the week, and there was a big storm came through. And actually, we're in the lull between that one and the next one that's due in 4 or 5 days. So there's not a lot happening. The air pressure's lifted a little bit. It's just flat, calm, and relatively dull, really. That's dull from a weather point of view. The conditions are a little bit overcast. It is a little bit dull, but it means that there won't be a favoured area as far as wind is concerned, and that's why it is a good match. Oh, just had another bite down here.
How's this going to affect fish behaviour then? What's the because this lake isn't massively deep, and we talk about deep lakes, fish coming up in the water and stuff. How's it going to affect them?
I don't think we're going to see huge weights. I don't think the carp are going to feed very, very heavily, which means that if the odd 1 or 2 do feed, then they're going to make a massive difference. There are a few 8-pounders, there are a few 10-pounders. A Carasio game is always a pretty safe bet when things are pretty straight and pretty flat. The weather conditions have been so carpy a few days ago that they might have had a really good feed then, and as a result they're not as hungry as we would like them to be, because when you've got low pressure and big winds, that's when you want to get a load of bait in and really pull the carp in. So I think the clever money at the moment is, let's see what we can get on the Carasios, and if we can pick a bonus carp up, then that would be the better tactic today.
You might gather by the fact we're waffling about the weather that there aren't that many fish being caught, which is a really interesting thing, because this is the area of the lake where most people fancied there was a good chance of catching. Interestingly, both Callum and John Arthur have not had a fish, Rob, and and also Andy Power, actually, to our right, has not had a fish.
Well,
wow.
Well, this is Andy Power now. This is peg 37, and there's a very, very interesting tell with Andy straight away, because he kicked the match off on the feeder out to the island, and he was expecting bites quickly. He's not got them, and within 20 minutes he's turned around and he's fishing down the edge. So he's either not confident that the fish are feeding well enough out there to spend any more time doing it, or alternatively he's seen something to his right hand side that's worth investigating. But that's a really interesting move. I suspect that he's seen carp down to the right hand side, because again, like I said a minute ago, there's an area there where there's probably 70, 80 yards where there isn't anybody on the bank. Now, they haven't been fished for, which is great because it means there's less pressure, but as soon as they are fished for, they're spooked. And if they're spooked, what they'll do is move into that safe area where there aren't anybody or any anglers fishing for them. And it may be that Andy's just having a little look down there to see if there's a bonus carp. Yeah.
Well, Hughesy, it's been a slow start. One of the people I saw wandering around this morning, excited like a kid on the night before Christmas, was the man on peg 15, which is Adam Palmer, and we can see that he's playing a fish.
Decent one
a
as
good
well.
peg, isn't it? That.
He's in the right zone there for a start. Anywhere, I think 30 yards either way of in there is worth a look, and his plot is a nice one. He's got an island in front of him. He's effectively end peg. Because there's a big gap. You don't normally peg down that shallow channel or narrow channel between the island and the bank, and that is good. Oh, Robbie's just got a fish in front of us as well here, so it's starting.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? And I think that might be what you were saying a little while ago about the fact that the place hasn't been fished. They sort of switch off a wee bit and stop being used to hunting around for food, and then suddenly realise that there's some angler's bait going in, and off they go.
Well, if nobody shouted boo at them for a while, they like a little bit of a rest, don't they? But that looks like a reasonable fish over the far side. We've got another one on the near side as well. We know Speedy's had a couple of fish already, so we're starting to warm up a little bit now. It's always nice to get those first few fish in the net. And there's carp moving.
There are carp moving. It's definitely carp moving. So on the far side on peg 15.
There's one there, look, a big swell there. Just see the ball.
Yeah, it's been disturbed by the fish that Robert Kite's playing.
Well, that might be that fish.
Well, that's safely in the net and looks pretty angry over on the far side. That's a decent fish, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
That's ghosty.
That's a decent fish. That really is a decent fish. And it's interesting to see how just in the last 5 minutes, 3 people have hooked carp. That's worth 5 or 6 of those little things.
Isn't it ever?
And this is Robert Kite directly underneath us now. Looks to be another decent fish, and I think this is his second, maybe even his third, but it's certainly his first decent one. Looks like a carp from the tail pattern there. Big boil of water coming up.
One of the things I love about this match so much, we said earlier on about how it's destroyed some big reputations, Parkdean Masters, hasn't it? Guys turn up with fantastic amounts of match wins in big competitions on their CVs. And then some of these other guys, like, Robert Kite, who's in front of us, and Adam Palmer across on the other side, and they really get amongst it, and I love it. I think it's so good. What we saw last year on this very area, in this very peg, was a young lad tearing up the field in front of some absolute superstars. What other major sport do you get that happening in? Apart from the odd FA Cup upset when, Nuneaton Borough beat Grimsby or something. This is just fantastic. I love this man. Now, interestingly, just looking across the lake, because Callum Dix has just struck into a fish and elastic is streaming out the end of his pole.
This is one of the differences with the skill and the experience, that how quickly you can get these big fish under control really, really makes a difference. Now, Callum's caught fish like that, no end of times. He just wants that in, netted.
There it is, safely in the net.
And there we go. And Rob has just netted his as well. Now,
fantastic stuff.
Callum's just had a crassia. Rob here has got a fish that looks like it's 6 or 7 pounds.
Well, there's Nick Speed. who's probably had the best start of anybody, right on the end peg there under the tree, shipping out his pole. And he's actually had 2 fish already, which in the context of what we've seen in the first 25 minutes of the match is as good as it gets. Well, he's in again, Rob. And Nick Speed, as you said, is a dangerous man when fish are biting. He's getting a lot of indications out by that island, sensing that there's a bit of frustration, that he wants carp to turn up, and I think he's catching what looks like little F1s or even little silverfish. What are you thinking?
I'm thinking that if it does kick off for him, you know, if he can keep getting the bites that he's getting and he can keep putting these, they are little F1s, you know, they're not necessarily going to be match winners on their own, but that's a poundfish.
Well, there's the 2018 Parkdean Resorts Masters champion Craig Edmonds, who is on peg 6, a peg he really didn't fancy, and it really is deathly quiet at this end of the lake. The guys around watching have said that probably nobody here has got more than about 5 or 6 pounds so far, and we're just approaching the end of the first hour. You know, this match really does run away with you. It does happen extremely quickly. And if anyone down here has got 5 or 6 pounds, it's Craig Edmonds, who is a superb angler in these circumstances, catching shy biting little F1s and Carasio. You can see the yellow elastic streaming out the end of his pole there. Looks like he's fishing reasonably shallow, and in the net it goes. Well, it's only a couple of pounds, maybe 3. That's what Hughesy and I were saying earlier on about the size of these fish. You know, they've put on some serious pounds since they were stocked in here. And that one drops safely in the keep net. And Craig Edmonds is in good shape at this end of Jenny's Lake. Well, Hughesy, it's not really happening, but there is a little bit of action on peg 43. Jason Howe, end peg, just putting a little run of fish together. He's had, what, 5 fish in the last 20 minutes?
Yeah, he's got quite a few fish in front of him. He's really got a nice pace going at the moment. He's fishing dead steady. He's not panicking. And he's well and truly in the lead in this half of the lake at the moment. I'd say he's into double figures now. And he's just been fishing a nice, tight, steady match. If you watch him, you know, he's not fast by any stretch of the imagination, but he is just really steady. And Clint tells me that these are known as blondies. They're like a little F1 style thing, averaging £1.5, £2, but he's got a ball of them down there feeding. He's taking advantage at the moment, and he's doing really well.
This is going to be one of those matches, isn't it, where, you know, guys like Jason and a few of the others, even over on the other side, Craig Edmonds, they're going to work their taters off for, you know, 3 hours, and then someone somewhere is going to get a big ball of carp turning up in their margin, catch 4 or 5 fish, you know, half a dozen bites and win the match.
Well, that's the risk for everyone at the moment, because, you know, when these bigger carp do come into play, because the match is a slow, low weight match at the moment, one fish can make all the difference. Paul Holland there, and that looks like it's a carp.
There'd be no more popular winner of this match if it was Paul Holland, as he stands up to try and get the net under this one and successfully nets it. Nicely done, Paul. It's a nice fish, Rob.
Yeah, of course, Paul's no stranger to this place.
Certainly not. He's just one of those anglers. One of the things that I respect massively about the guys that fish this event, there are the same people that qualify for this final over and over again. You know, people like Callum, people like John Harvey and Nick Speed. This is Nick's 8th final. There's a certain kind of breed of match angler who just kind of fit in with the way that the Parkdean Masters works. Richie Hull too has been in lots of these finals. It's no coincidence that they turn up over and over again. Paul being a prime example of that. And everybody, if you ask around the lake, would love to see him win this. You know, he's such a nice fella, such a good angler, so consistent. And I think if his name was on that big check at the end, it would be a very popular winner. Well, Clint, we're talking about this being the 21st year this fantastic match has taken place, and I know you've been at every single one of them. I mean, over the years, what do you think you would say you've seen, how has it developed over those years?
I would say that, especially this year, we've got a few more of sort of the unknown angler. So normally we have we've got a strong field, but a lot of the people that have come through the years of qualifying, and, you know, like Nathan Fox from last week winning the Preston Festival. You know, I said to him this morning, "You're a little bit nervous," and he said, "Oh no, I was nervous coming up to the festival, but now this is my day to chill." And that's a real nice attitude. You know, we've got people fishing the final now that haven't been in there before, and they're here to enjoy the day and possibly win a grand or 15 grand.
We talk about the opportunities that arise in this match, and there's Martin Holmes, who's been in this final 2 or 3 times and has, you know, really never had an opportunity. If we're going to talk about just odd bonus fish making the difference here, you know, this Martin's playing at the moment, this could be one of those fish, couldn't it?
Well, it is one of those fish. This is exactly what we were talking about a moment ago, that there's the odd carp on the surface that looks like it might be mugged. They're starting now up in those surface levels just to be a little bit more interested. You know, the first hour and a quarter, 1 or 2 got caught, but they were backing off. Now they're settling down a little bit, they're moving around, they're starting to come out, they're starting to be a lot more obvious, and we're seeing a few more carp on the surface. And that's exactly what that one is. You know, he's fishing fairly shallow, and he's seen the carp, had a go for it, and happy days, game on.
Concentration levels on Martin's face. I mean, look at him, he's really just tuned into that. Is it the case then? Do you reckon that the carp will kind of ignore stuff for a certain amount of time, and eventually there's so much food gone in, there's so much activity that they can't resist it, they've got to have a go?
Sometimes, but again, a lot of that depends on the pressure they're receiving through the course of the day, and also, you know, the weather conditions. We know that carp days are very different from today. You know, if you're going on a big weight of carp and a big weight of big carp, it's not today. They're going to be on the deck somewhere if you're going to get a big weight. So now the guys have just got to think around the problem a little bit more and see how they can catch them up in the water. It's not bright enough and there's not enough movement activity for it to be a full-on mugging day. But wherever you look now across the lake, there are little bow waves, there's fish moving. There we go, game on. There are fish starting to come out here, and Jenny's is starting to get excited. We're not halfway, but we're not far off. And I would say there's probably 4 anglers now. They're just starting to stretch their legs a little bit and move away from the chasing pack.
Well, Hughesy, look at this. Now, if there was ever a man on the charge, Paul Holland is it, and that is, surely that's a carp.
Yes, he's had a change of tactics, and it's interesting because he's been sticking it out on the island, on the feeder, catching some decent fish, but it's dried up a little bit for him, and he's moved onto the pole. He was baiting a shorter line. He's out on the long pole now, and he's straight away he's into fish. And he's fishing an absolute blinder, he really is.
It's why I said earlier on, though, you know, this man, there would be no more popular winner of this competition than Paul Holland. He's been in this final so many times, has been close so many times. And if you can get into this final, I suppose what you've got to say is you're good enough to win it, because, you know, it's no mean feat just getting here, as you said earlier on. And it's just all sort of smooth and seamless. Play the fish, shorten your elastic, feed at the same time.
What he's got that other people haven't got at the moment is a pod of carp in front of him, and he's taking advantage of them. You know, if this is a carp, and it certainly looks like it, then this is his 5th or 6th fish. I don't think anybody else has had that many chances, let alone fish.
Still not a ripple of wind out here, you know, and that's just not making it easy. I just heard Nick Speed, who's in front of us, opposite Paul Holland, say to you that if it had a blow on it, if it had a bit of ripple, it would be a completely different match. It's hard to disagree with him.
No, that's right. You know, it affects so many different things. The air, the conditions like this, the air pressure for a start is making the fish behave a little bit differently. We talked about weather earlier, and it's this sort of gloomy anticyclonic in-between pressures. So it's fairly high pressure, which means it's static, not a lot's happening. There is the merest breath of wind. Paul's just landed that one.
Has he got it? Yes, he has. That's a big fish.
And that is a decent fish indeed.
Yeah, that's decent. That's 5 or 6, isn't it? Maybe 4.5, maybe 5.
Either way, it's a decent fish, and it's going to add more distance between him and the chasing pack. He's fishing an absolute blinder over there. He's got 2 lines that are rocking, and they're rocking with decent fish as well. He's got some tanks out there.
Rocking with tanks?
Rocking with tanks. It's a new thing. Halfway stage, and things are starting to hot up down here at Jenny's. Wow, what a game. I'm going to put my money at the moment well and truly in Paul Holland's pocket. He seems to be the man that is in the lead. Now, while we've been wandering around everywhere, we hear reports that he's catching a few fish. He's caught now 4 decent carp, and estimates are that with the Carassion F1 he's had, he's around about £40, which is a reasonable way ahead of everyone else.
But there are other people catching a few fish. You know, it's what we were saying earlier on about them just starting to switch on, and it's getting to the stage now where Nick Speed, who's just over to our right, is admitting to sign of mid-20s now. If he's admitting to mid-20s, he's probably got mid-30s. You know what Speedy's like.
John Harvey as well.
Yes.
So John Harvey is doing really, really well. He's been plugging away. He's on mid-20s. We've got Rob next door to him. He is on probably mid-20s. And then across the pond, we've got Adam Palmer, who fairly recently caught another decent fish. Now, I think he's going to be higher than mid-20s now. He might be upper 20s, low 30s. So this really is game on. Don't forget, right up the other end, we've got a bit of a battle going on up there as well. The weights on, they're not quite as high, but Trig's doing pretty well up there.
It's, you know, I mean, I know you love a sporting cliche, Hughes, but it is a game of two halves. I suppose you could say, in fact, a lake of two halves, because up at this end, I'm getting the feeling that if the carp switch on, someone's going to run away with it.
Yes.
Unless, down the other end, someone like Phil Canning or Jason Hale or even Craig Edmonds, Trig, keeps those Carassios and those little blonde F1s coming, and they start to build a weight as well. I mean, we could be looking at, what, 50, 60 pounds to win the whole thing.
I think so, unless the carp come into the game properly. And I've got to say, I'll go back to what I was suggesting earlier on, that I think early on in the game, it's definitely going to be an F1 Carassio style day. That's where you build your weight up. But if the carp do come to the party, that's where it's going to make a real difference. Paul Holland has set his stall out at the moment. He's on the feeder, he's on the island, he's going all or nothing, he's after big carp. If he doesn't get him because they don't feed, then you know what? They don't feed and he's out the game. But he is fishing a 15 grand match. He's not after the section, he's after the full prize. Here's the man in action. Literally just popped the feeder out to the corner of the island there, just on the shelf, landed within inches, and he didn't even time to put the rod down.
Do you know, it's fascinating watching him, isn't it? Because since we've been stood here talking, just past the halfway stage, Speedy's had 3 casts in 3 completely different spots. He's not clipped up on his feeder rod, and they've landed on a sixpence every single time. That is absolute class, Husey.
He's immensely good at it, he really is.
It's interesting because he really did fancy this peg, and a lot of people walking around, you know, they saw he was on an M peg and looked at the number and thought it wasn't going to be his day, but it could be.
Well, it's game on down here now. We've got 2 anglers, both catching fish. If you can hear a funny buzzing noise in the distance, that's a plane just landing at Newquay Airport. But we're looking at Paul Holland, that has literally just put back in again. The float's gone under, the elastic's pulled out, and he's in yet again. Not as big a fish. This is the run-of-the-mill creatures that he's getting, maybe a little bit smaller.
Well, that's a pound and a half, isn't it?
Well, he's catching them, that's the thing.
Yeah, and then interestingly, right in front of us on peg 30, chucking his feeder within millimetres of the island, is Nick Speed. You know, and this really is Speedy's game, flicking a little feeder, a little method feeder or a little pellet feeder within a couple of inches of the island and just building a nice little weight. And Paul Holland on the other side, as Nick puts that weight in the keep net, is in again, Rob. Safely landed again. And they're, you know, let's be clear, they're not big fish. They're not the sort of the creatures that live in here that we know are around. But every time he puts the landing net in, the scoreboard ticks over once again.
1 hour to go here at Whiteacres for the final of the Parkdean Masters. 15,000 quid up for grabs. It's been a really, really interesting, quite tight match, but we've got one man that is now starting to stretch his legs, and that man, of course, is Paul Holland.
Yeah. It's been really interesting to watch this. You know, this match didn't kick off very quickly at the start, and often with these big finals on this lake, you kind of get that. It's been a bit sleepy, let's be honest. And then the last kind of, I suppose, what, 40 minutes?
Yeah,
an hour?
Kicking.
It's just started to pick up a bit, whether that's the food going in and, you know, the fish waking up a wee bit, or I'm not absolutely certain what. I'll leave you to explain the technicalities. But Paul Holland has got 50, maybe 60 pounds.
I reckon so.
I don't think there's anyone that close to him. The problem we've got, or the problem he's got, I suppose, is in a tight weight match like that, someone now in this last hour could have a good 20 minutes and catch him up. They could catch 3 or 4 fish, you know, and they're right in the game. Well, there is that man, Andy Power, Mr. Hughes, and look what he's doing.
Well, quelle surprise.
Yeah, I know.
right at the very beginning of the match, he went out to the island to the spot that you would normally fish, spent 15 minutes there, and then started dumping a bit of bait down the edge and having a look, because he's got such a big margin down to that right-hand side. And there's quite a few carp that have been loitering up and down there all day. The pot is a big one. It's going to go down the edge again. He's going to dump a load more bait in there, and he's looking for a sprint finish on this.
And he's got exactly an hour left. In fact, he's fed kind of out in front of him to sort of 2 o'clock.
He's got 2 spots going there.
Yeah.
So
And there's
Paul Holland
playing a fish.
is over there, and he is literally just put back in again, and he's in straight away. Let's have a look at what that is.
That looks possibly smaller.
Yeah, there's a bit of elastic out there, but he's tipped down, keeping steady.
You see, the thing with this is, it's all very well if the rest of them try and catch him up, but that only really matters if he stops catching fish. And to be honest, there's no sign of him doing that at the moment.
No, he's got a really nice, comfortable margin. That's his chips and gravy fish there. He's just caught 1 pound, pound and a half. Absolutely. Has it for tea all the time. £1.5 fish. Every now and again he'll have a big steak. Do you not understand commentary, Ford? Good heavens. Chips and gravy. Chips and gravy, people. You know what we mean.
Well, Husey, it's not really happening anywhere else other than in Paul Holland's peg. And every time we look over, we see him winding in a fish. And surely he's got this match in the bag. But if we look over at peg 15, there is Adam Palmer, who was the early leader, who's just put his pole down the edge to the platform next to him to his left-hand side. His float's gone under.
Oh, that looks a decent fish as well. If they are down there, then this could be a new challenger coming into the game. And these end pegs with a good stretch down the side of the island are definitely ones to watch. You know, we've looked at the possibility of Andy Power catching fish, but they've just not turned up yet. If Adam's got him down there and he's had 1 first chuck, then there is a chance he can catch up. But I feel at the moment he's probably left it 15 minutes too late.
This must be, for someone who's in his very first final, just such a thrill to be fishing among these top level anglers. And you know, we've said this before, that you don't get the chance to play football against Liverpool unless you're in the Premier League. You don't get the chance to play cricket against the top level players unless you're in the same division as them. But this is an open event. This is, you know, pretty much anybody can join it. If you're good enough, you get in the final and you're there fishing against these top anglers. By the way, Paul Holland's just landed another fish while we've been watching Adam playing this lump. And there it is. Oh, that's a big fish. Look at the size of that thing, Husey. Good Lord.
He netted that one well. I thought he was going to struggle with that one because it did look a half decent fish, but he got that one perfectly. It's quite a deep net, so that helps him out an awful lot with that one. Get the head in. Game on.
Well, just when you thought it was all over, and we're into the last 10 minutes of the match, there is Luke Sears. Now, he is a man also slightly on the charge, and the big question mark against whether he can be in contention or not is whether this match will go on long enough for him to catch up with Paul Holland, and I suspect it probably won't. But it looks like Luke's had half a dozen decent sized carp fishing down to his right in that margin. In goes the net, safely in. What sort of size is that? Well, that's not a bad size. That's 5 or 6.
Another carp as well.
Yeah, another carp. Maybe a little bit bigger than 5 or 6, Husey.
Well, is this going to be enough? Will it be too little too late? We're nearly at the end of the day. It is literally minutes on the clock now. It's been Paul Holland's almost all the way through. Has Luke done enough in the last few minutes?
Well, mate, that's it. It's all over. This has been a brilliant match, you know. I've really enjoyed watching it.
It's been a tense one,
yeah,
hasn't it? It really has been a tense one as well. At the moment, we're thinking it's Paul Holland's all the way through. We've thought, you know what, yeah, it's Paul Holland's. It probably is, but there have been a few little changes towards the end.
Just a couple of things towards the end. You know, behind us over on the other bank, Luke Sears has come in with a little bit of a late charge. And we're going to have to see what happens because the scales are on their way. So here's Luke Sears on peg 9, who's had a nice little late run down his right-hand margin. Just sensing it probably didn't happen soon enough. And one of the issues that Husey and I were discussing a few minutes ago was the fact that this match is 4 hours, not 5. So Clint Elliott calls the weight, 59 pounds, 6 ounces for Luke Sears. Well, here we are with the man of the hour, Mr. Holland. What have you got?
Don't know. Don't know. I caught a few carp early on a feeder, a couple on the pole, and then this whatever's in that net shallow, like just shallow on pellets, a few crassios and 2 little carp. So you're just trying to get a bite. You don't worry about it. As soon as it's in the net, it doesn't matter. Like so.
Well, we best find out, mate.
Yeah, fingers crossed. Fingers crossed. Okay.
He's put in so much time, so much effort, and I bet his nerves are jangling at the moment. The interesting thing with Paul's match is that it kind of really was a match of two halves. He's had a good spell on the carp early on, and then has switched to pole tactics.
55.4.
Surely, and his first weigh is 55.4. Surely, 55.4 is a tremendous first net. Second net for Paul Holland, and as many fish in that one as there were in the first. This is going to be pushing £100. This is going to be pushing £100, and this could win him the Parkdean Masters title that he's wanted for so long. This is utterly brilliant.
£50 8.
£50 8 ounces. That's 104. £105 12 for Paul Holland.
105.
What a fantastic performance! And is it any wonder that there's a big smile on his face? That could be a Masters record, a ton up in a big match like this. What a fantastic performance. Well, mate, I've sat and watched you fish so many of these matches, and at the start I kind of got a bit of an idea that you might do well.
Yeah.
When it started to happen, what was that like?
It was mint. Again, what you said, I've been in so many of these finals. I was next to Andy Geldart when he won it, and there's nothing you can do because you're behind the island. I was next to Grant when Grant won it again. You sat behind the island. So fortunately today, I think everything's gone in my favour. The wind's been coming down, which makes a massive difference. I caught a few on a feeder early, like some carp. That gave me a bit of confidence, but you just felt that unless it's windy, you're not gonna have that mega run on it.
Look, you're an angler who's fished this final and done the journey. No question, you've done the journey here. What's it like to get to this point? You've won this match, Paul.
Yeah, it's just meant to be sat on a pile. Because of what I was saying before to Rob, you know, when you're here and you come and you practice and you put the effort in, you start thinking you're broke. You start thinking it just ain't never going to happen. And to be honest, this match has been the easy. They all are. When you're on the fish, it's easy. So we've got to do it up one, put it in the net. If you're getting more bites and signs than everyone else, it's not. It's different when it's a bottle job and you're fishing for a handful of carp. That's when, you know. But when you have a match like that, you're just getting steady bites. You've just got to hope that nobody else is getting as many bites as you. So yeah, chuffed.
I'm sensing you're a bit emotional about this. I mean, it means a lot, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, because I've been here. I've been in this final. I don't know how many times. A lot.
Have you got any idea of the sort of measure of respect and how pleased other people will be to see you win this match? Because everybody, without exception, says if there's anybody they'd like to see win this match, it's Paul Holland, and I think you've done it.
Yeah, fingers crossed. Fingers crossed.
But what does that mean to you that your peers think that of you?
Oh yeah, that's again, like, that's why, you know, going back to the fishing side of it. When you do the fishing that I do, it's like one match, on to the next match, good, bad or indifferent, and you kind of got to have that. It's no good getting giddy, because if you get too giddy, when it's not going for you, it's very easy to go the other way. So you just got to just try and be nice and humble. We're all here, we all wanna, you know, we all put the effort in, we all practice, we all do our gear. It means a lot to every one of us, so that's what I mean. That's why I'm not that type of person, because I've been where Russ and Si have been, and, you know, they're my really good friends of mine, so I know how I felt when it didn't go for me. So that's why I try and be. I've been on, hopefully I'm on the plus side of it today, but I've been more on that side of it than this side of it. So yeah, Andy, honestly, I'm just chuffed to have got a few bites and just feel like I ain't cocked it up, you know. So.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, it's time for our 2021 Parkdean Masters champion. He's been in this event a number of times. He's won festivals to get here, he's qualified regularly. He's actually sat next to Grant Albert and Andy Geldart and watched them win. It was his neighbours to watch it this time, and what a display of angling we saw from this man. £45.10 was second in section, £105, 12 ounces. That is a new Parkdean record, I believe, for a win in the Parkdean Masters. Can I present our new champion, Paul Holland?